Hello, everyone. How are you? It's really nice to see you all. um, my name is Clarke Wolfe. Welcome to Sending the Wolf, a weekly live stream, twice weekly live stream, actually. Pop culture, movies, TV, and all of the above, hosted by me, Clarke Wolfe. How's everybody doing? Say hello in the chat if you want. You're obviously welcome to lurk. But if you'd like to say hello, please do. I see you in the chat, Mike Joyce. Hi. And hey, Ronan. Good to see you. Yeah, how are you guys doing? I'm coming to you guys from hey Alvi, good to see you. Hi Naz, good to see you. Welcome. Hi Steve, good to see you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Hi Paul. Hi Andrew. Good to see you. Yes, so checking in. I am in Southern California. Hi, Lowell. Good to see you. I'm in the Southern California, and I mostly, y'all know if you don't know, I split my time between Atlanta and Los Angeles, and I have been spending the last couple of months in Los Angeles. And as you know, I postponed my stream on Monday because I was moving units. And it's very exciting. Not only will I actually be saving a little money, so that's great, but I will have a designated streaming studio and space in my new place. And I'm so excited about that, to have guests, to do all kinds of stuff from that workspace. So it's all for the best. However, I did have to postpone the stream on Monday. And then the plan was on Wednesday to get my Wi-Fi set up, my internet set up in my new place. But unfortunately, that did not happen. So as I'm sure you all know, on Tuesday, a wildfire broke out in the Pacific Palisades, which is the western side of Los Angeles. And unfortunately, another fire broke out in Altadena, which is the east side of Los Angeles. And then, and also another fire broke out north in Sylmar. So we were absolutely, surrounded by fire and by all sorts of devastation. So I live in, I recently, I'm sure some of you have heard me say over the years, a different neighborhood that I was living in, but now I'm east. And so my neighborhood, part of my neighborhood was evacuated. We are we're right on the edge of Pasadena. And so while I personally was not under direct evacuation orders, my neighborhood was. And so it was just getting closer and closer. And so I decided to bring Rufus. We packed a bag and hopped in the car, and we just drove south. So we decided to kind of just spend the day down a little south of Los Angeles and see how things went. And when things were not improving, they had mostly stayed the same, especially on the east side. And then, of course, with the Pacific Palisades fire, it was spreading south, so much that Santa Monica, part of Santa Monica, where I used to live, was evacuated. And if you know anything about Santa Monica and how densely populated it is, and what a big city, piece of the city it is, that that's very scary. So I decided to stay put here, just a little bit further south of LA, and get a hotel room. And I watched on TV as it happened. And I have to say that KTLA has been doing an incredible job with their coverage. Very, sort of level-headed, and not afraid to highlight the severity of the situation, but at the same time, not trying to scare you. But watching the fire break out in the Hollywood Hills was exactly what I was afraid of. And it's exactly why I chose to, I even felt a little bit at the time that I was being maybe a little over dramatic by leaving town. But that was exactly what I was afraid of. A densely populated part of the city catching fire, because all it would take is an ember, and then the evacuation of a densely populated part of LA happens, and there's nowhere to go. So fortunately, as far as we know, no lives were lost in the Hollywood Hills fire. And what was absolutely incredible was to see how quickly the firefighters were able to put out the blaze, and being so close to the two things were working in our advantage with respect to that. One was the fact that the Hollywood Reservoir is a 2-minute helicopter flight from the Hollywood Hills. And on top of that, the just hurricane level winds that we had been experiencing, which, yes, we experience the Santa Ana winds every year, but no, we do not experience them to this degree every year. They had sort of subsided last night. So as a result, I mean, I truly, truly can't imagine what would have happened had those helicopters not been able to do water jumps so quickly. So our, the LAPD, or excuse me, the LA Fire Department, and all of the surrounding fire departments have just been working around the clock. They've had people come in from all over the country and to try to help. Now, the good news is that the Hollywood Hills fire was taken care of pretty quickly. And this morning, that evacuation order lifted. And then the piece of my neighborhood that was under an evacuation order was also lifted. So that's wonderful. However, unfortunately, as far as I know, when I last checked, both the Eaton fire, which is the East fire out of Altadena, and the Pacific Palisades fire are still 0% contained. So this is, really scary. And we're not going to spend the whole time talking about this. I actually prepped a show for us today, and I have and the tabs are back for anyone who knows me from Fear HQ. My tabs are back. It's very exciting. But that said, I did want to sort of just say, because this is a pop culture an entertainment-based podcast and live stream, and many of you are here because you love film and television and comic books and music and pop culture in general. And the one thing that I would really, really encourage you to know is that, yes, there are a lot of wealthy people who live up in the Pacific Palisades, and there are a lot of wealthy people that live in Pasadena, and there are wealthy people who live in the Hollywood Hills. However, there are working class people built in and baked into all of these neighborhoods. And I'm of the opinion that no one deserves, there's no victory dance when a rich person, suffers. But nonetheless, I just want you guys to know how bad this is. It is not hyperbole. It is not the media sensationalizing. This is really bad. And I will be honest with you that, when you make a movie, there are so many different people that touch that thing, whether it is a movie or a piece of music or a TV show or a comic book. And they all live, or most of them live, in and around LA. And I don't know how we come back from this. Los Angeles will come back. It has to, it will. And we are resilient. And again, I don't want this to be doom and gloom, but I just want you all to know the severity of what's happening and how a lot of us who are in the entertainment industry have been suffering for a long time. The lack of production, the lack of things that are being greenlit, even as an entertainment host and a personality. And I wrote this on my Patreon when I reactivated it. You guys know as well as I do, for the last 10 plus years, have you ever known me to not be covering pop culture for an outlet, whether that was Nerdist or Collider or IMDb or AMC or, so on and so on and so on. And I will tell you personally that those jobs in that part of the industry, it's not to say that it doesn't exist, but as we knew it, it doesn't exist. And I don't have a job right now, not for lack of trying. And I'm not talking about being an actor, and I'm not talking about being a director, because those things, and a writer and selling scripts, those things are very hard to do in general. And anybody who's in this business knows that. But the career that I've had for the last 10 plus years is dead. And a lot of that is due to this economic strain. And there are many, many causes for that. And we don't have to get into all of that. The reason I'm telling you this, and the reason that I am, being a little probably too vulnerable and too honest about the suffering that we on the ground in LA are experiencing, is because it's real. And this is going to make it so much worse. So much worse. So, I don't, and it's not over. That's the other thing. It's not over. So this is to say, my advice would be, if you want to help, obviously there are the Red Cross, and there are plenty of different places that you can look to support people in need. But what I would also say is, maybe if you can, think about ways that you can support your favorite artists and creators. Obviously, yes, a lot of us have Patreons or whatever, but I'm also talking about maybe rent our movies, or buy them on digital or Blu-ray, or watch them on streaming. Those little revenue streams of residuals or views or clicks or eyeballs, like that is really, really, it goes a long way. And, I will say that on Tuesday, I believe it was Tuesday, Mark Zuckerberg announced that Meta properties were going to be making a lot of changes in terms of the content that they allow. And I did talk about this, and again, and I wrote it in my thread, and it's not lost on me that I was threading about it on one of his platforms. But why am I telling you this? Well, the people like me who used to do things for outlets and shows and brands and networks, most of it has switched to the individual and the influencer. So we're responsible for finding our own income. And a lot of that currency is social media. It's followers, it's engagement, it's clicks, it's retweets, it's all of that. So this is what I mean by, if you can, share your favorite creatives and artists' posts, like them, engage with them, leave a comment. Like, I know that sounds silly, and you're watching this on YouTube and it's become a joke. Like and subscribe, be sure to download, leave a review on iTunes, all of that stuff. And I know it sounds silly, but now more than ever, those numbers, that's currency. And yeah, it's a wild time. It's a wild time. So for all of you in the chat right now, thank you for letting me sort of hop on my little, not soapbox, but sort of just be very honest with you right now. It's hard, it's scary, but part of the reason I wanted to do this stream today is because there was this little piece of something that Andy Muschietti said about Welcome to Derry, and about how the 3-season arc or plan is like the 1960s, the 1930s, and 1900 something, which I have the article. We'll get to it. But I was just like, that was a bright spot. That was such a bright spot for me this morning. Like, all of it fell away, all of the stress and like the worry and the pain and the sadness and the fear fell away. And I was like, oh my God, that's exactly what this series should be doing. Great job. I'm so happy to hear that. And so that for a second, I felt like I kind of came back to reality, like I came back to find a little bit of joy. And so that's that's why I wanted to do this, because honestly, it was like this really organic moment of just true nerdy excitement. And so I figured, now would be a great time. So thank you all so much for being here. This is wonderful. And I'm so happy to have you all in the chat. And let's keep everybody, and I see, Sam, I see you in the chat. I see people in the chat. And there are so many people who are overlooked: unhoused people, elderly people, incarcerated people, people who do not have the means to get out of town. Like, the list goes on and on. So please, pay attention to, if you are interested in volunteering or donating, please pay attention to those legitimate sources, some of the brands that you know and trust, and those that they will hopefully be, distributing that help. So, okay, shall we get into it? Hi, Mirror Domains. Thank you, Ronan. Hi, Calibre. Good to see you guys. Again, I see you. And thanks for letting me. I did a 15-minute monologue. Do you guys want to see some tabs, or do you want to see some tabs? Let's look at some tabs. This is great. Okay. Share screen. This is, of course, what I want to share. And also share tab audio. Yes. Okay. Let's talk about how about I add it to the screen? Wait, hold on. Add to stage. There we go. Okay. So tabs. That's right, Mike. Tabs. Hi, Lowell. Not hi. I already said hi. I'm glad your dad's hooked on Andor. Okay. Let me talk about some stuff that I did last weekend. Oh my God. Was it really just last weekend? I think it was. I went and saw Seven in IMAX. I think I had teased this on one of the last shows. I saw it on a whim that it was coming to IMAX over the weekend. And Seven is one of my favorite movies. It's maybe, I don't know if it's my favorite Fincher, but it might be. David Fincher is one of my favorite directors, and I love this movie. I love this movie for so many different ways. So I saw it in IMAX, and it was incredible. It looked so good. And by the way, the movie itself was just it's just so good. It still plays. Brad Pitt's funnier than ever. Morgan Freeman giving a great performance. And especially if you watch it within the context of it being if you watch it in the context of it being a film noir, like this incredible neo-noir, it's just chef's kiss, wonderful. But I wanted to share this piece because this headline really caught my eye, and it caught my eye before I saw the screening. And it was about Fincher using AI to help with this remaster. And I thought it was just a wonderful, a really interesting perspective, because I think, David Fincher, there's a lot of filmmakers who are of a certain school or a certain caliber who are like, oh, I only shoot on film, or I only do this or whatever. David Fincher is not one of those directors, but I thought it was really interesting to discuss how he was using these tools. And so I want to just sort of skip down. I loved that he was saying, he basically was saying, that the film as it was in 1995, he was essentially trying to restore the film to the quality that it was in 1995, and then try to work from that. he talked a lot about the focus, things like that. And he said there were shots that were completely out of focus. We were able to use AI and make mats and extract the performance that was in the backseat and render it. This is when Kevin Spacey's character John Doe is in the backseat of the police car, right before the finale. He says it's still soft, but it's not as egregious as it was. But yeah, my real attitude is I don't want to change it. I want to make it opening night 1995, but the pristine version of that. And then, of course, we talk about, AI, and the interviewer says, I know the AI in question is a big one that's ringing around the industry. What's your attitude? And he kind of says, well, there's a lot to it's a lot to say, oh, are you for AI or against AI? And it kind of reminded me of that conversation or that clip that went around where Ben Affleck was talking about how AI will realistically make its way into the entertainment industry and where it's at now. And so he talked about, so I thought this was a great anecdote and I wanted to share it for any of you cinephiles out there. So he said, for instance, there was a shot that had been operated with the intention of the characters leaning towards the edge of the frame. The camera op missed it. And so he makes a sort of staggered pan with one of the characters. And there was data that was lost, that was irretrievable. Now, on either side of it, we had the fullness of the character's shoulder. And we were able to kind of recreate, using AI, recreate that shoulder and the kind of ripples or motions of the light on the surface of the leather. We were able to sort of composite so that we didn't have what I consider to be distracting and unnecessary movement. And so a lot of stuff like that where you go, oh, I wish I had the look around the room that I have now, harvesting in 8K and then downsampling it to 4K. I had the headroom because it's Super 35 and I didn't have the look around rule. Now this, I thought, was also, so that's a practical example of what he used artificial intelligence for. But this I also thought was was a really important way to think about it. So Fincher goes on to say, I mean, look, you give me a tool, a powerful tool to do X, Y, and Z. I may not be interested in Y and Z, but if I can use it for the sake of X, all tools, if they do what they say they're going to do, are good tools. And it's usually the tools that overpromise and underdeliver that I take more umbrage than. Here's this wildly powerful tool set. Use it to make something ugly. So I like this. I like this. I think that this is like a really, good way to think about how AI can really help tell filmmakers stories. The issue, of course, is that nobody out of the goodness, I find it hard to believe that corporations, out of the goodness of their heart, will only use AI for the good stuff, like this example that David Fincher gives. And so that is, I think, why, we got to have rules for this kind of thing. And Kevin Murphy says AI should be helpful tools like droids in Star Wars. Yeah, I think that's right. Wouldn't it be funny if R2D2 or C3PO got in there and they were like, oh, let me help you fix that in your, wouldn't it be funny to see C3PO trying to help David Fincher remaster 7? That's something that's a special feature on the non-existent, DVD that I would like to see. Anyway, I thought this was really interesting. I am becoming such a nerd for projections and such a nerd for the way that film, I watch movies now. I've mentioned this before, but Hector Navarro has a 3D TV and he has all these 3D movies and he's really, really gotten me into 3D. And then as a result, I think I might have told you guys this story last week, but I'm going to tell it one more time. And that is that I was invited to the Nosferatu LA premiere, but I didn't bring my glasses because I was like, well, I have a clutch. I'm wearing a dress and I have a small purse, so I'm not going to bring my glasses. And then I realized, yes, this is a vampire movie. It is dark. And it's not, to be fair, to all credit to Robert Eggers and his team, it's not one of those movies that is so dark that you just can't see anything. But it is a dark movie and it is impeccably lit. So I was like, okay, I don't have my glasses, I can't see. So then I went with another group of friends to go see it. They got tickets to see it in Nosferatu in 35 millimeter. So I'm like, okay, cool. This should be like a premium viewing experience. And it was one of the worst screen projections I have ever seen. Just atrocious, like absolutely terrible. And they should be ashamed of themselves. I don't know if it was just laziness. I don't know if a bulb was out, but nonetheless, it was awful. So all of the IMAX screenings of Nosferatu were all at like 10 p.m. And you guys know me, Grandma is not starting a 2.5 movie after 10 p.m. Like it's not happening. So finally, and it's like second or third week of release on this Monday night. So gosh, only 3 days ago, feels like a long time ago. We went and saw it in IMAX. There was a 6 p.m. showing. And y'all, I have to tell you, it was incredible. It was just, oh my God, the craft, the way it was meant to be seen. And I'll tell you this, I am not the person that will tell you to put your phone away. I'll grumble about it, or maybe I'll lean over and say, excuse me, could you just turn the brightness off? Like, I don't even tell people to put it away, but just like, please turn the brightness down, or turn it off rather, the brightness. But I tell you what, it was a 6 p.m. screening of Nosferatu in IMAX in its third week of release, at a theater where we went to City Walks. You have to pay to park there. And I tell you what, in the opening scene, this person just had their phone out, and I couldn't even help myself. It just came out, and I said, please put your phone away. Like, just like that. And I saw the person kind of jump and like put it away, and that phone did not come out again. But I was like, who's going to an IMAX screening of Nosferatu and doesn't know to put your effing phone away? So no more interruptions. It was very good. But yeah, definitive way to see that movie. I was so impressed. And I definitely liked it the most. You know why too? Here's the other reason why. One of my beefs with Robert Eggers' Nosferatu is that it is shot in a lot of medium shots and with actors looking right at each other like this. So again, this is obviously a nod to the 1922 original. There's a lot of visual stuff in there where, I can clearly, having watched, my brother loved the original Nosferatu. So I've seen it. We had it on every edition of DVD you could. I've seen it a lot. And so I know what Eggers was doing. He was staging certain scenes like you would have staged it in 1922. And that's fine. However, when you do that and the actors are looking at each other like this, or if you're Bill Skarsgård like this, but you lose their eyes. So you can't see you can't connect to them emotionally. But I have to tell you, seeing Nosferatu in IMAX, I could see their faces. I could see them listening. They were lit beautifully. Like, it's all in there. But I also think if you make a movie like that, you run the risk of really alienating your audience if there's something off with the projector. So anyway, if you get the chance to see Nosferatu in IMAX, even if it's not your favorite movie of all time, I sincerely, wholeheartedly, as a cinematic experience, recommend checking it out. So I am seeing Lowell says Nosferatu is amazing. Mirror Domain says I kind of want to watch it again. Kevin says my only beef with Nosferatu was the dark shots. Did you know his coat is a leopard print? Okay, I can't tell if you're being funny or not, Kevin, but to your point, I'm listening to Robert Eggers do all of these interviews and talking about scabs and talking about boils and talking about, like Orlok's like actual skin and the details that they put into the decay. And I was like, I've seen this movie twice. I don't know what the heck he's talking about. Like, that's not in there. And then I saw the IMAX version and I was like, oh, yes, it is. The detail is 100% there. They kept talking about the maggots. And I was like, I don't know what they're talking about. I've seen this movie twice. And sure enough, on that third time, there they were. So it is not as dark as you might think, Kevin. Like, it truly is beautifully lit, but boy, oh boy, your projection better be good. Sam says, I almost yelled at someone. I was worried wasn't going to put the phone away once the intermission ended for The Brutalist, and I'm normally chill. Yeah, I mean, Sam, I hear you. Like, you know, I won't give up this fight because I understand that it is sort of like basically culturally accepted right now, but I certainly don't think it's acceptable. But yeah, I also don't want somebody to get in a fight with me or shoot me in a movie theater. So it's a weird thing. Mirror Domain says, I enjoyed that there wasn't a cut every 3 seconds. Yeah, I see you, Mirror Domains. Let's see. Andrew says, I am seeing Nosferatu tomorrow in a double feature with Sonic 3 to review for my YouTube channel. You know something, Andrew? I have to say, you left a comment on one of my videos and I checked out your YouTube channel. And really impressive, great work. Keep it up. It was so cool. And I recently saw Sonic 3 because my friend Josh Miller and his writing partner, Pat, were 2 of the writers on it. They've been with the franchise since the beginning. And I really enjoyed Sonic 3, so I hope you enjoy it too. But I got to tell you, Nosferatu and Sonic 3, I don't know if you could pick 2 more different movies, but I like the way you're thinking, and keep up the great work. That was me on my phone at Nosferatu. Just wanted to make quick reservations at Buca di Beppo after the show. Hey, they got to get the Buca di Beppo. Yeah. Yeah, we've been doing this thing where we're adding Ferratu to the end of everything. So you got to get that di Beppo Ferratu. You know what I'm saying? Eggers Mirror Domain says Eggers doesn't use a lot of B-roll cuts like a hand opening a door. He just leaves it in wide. That's right. Absolutely. Ronan says at this point, I need to find a screening on film. I need it. Yeah, just make sure it's well lit, Ronan. Don't have the same experience I did, because boy, I was just a nightmare that was. Your brother, yeah, ZSH, he did. He really did. So yeah, horror genre stuff has been in our family for a long time. Mike says, love Nosferatu and want to see it again in IMAX, but it's only playing 10 or later near me. Yeah, totally, Mike. Same with me. But we finally caught a 6 p.m. We found a 6 p.m. So maybe as like other things kind of fall out, you know, the more screening times will open up. I will say here, let's click over to the tabs, because I do have an article. Oh, wait, did I not pull it? Seriously, Clarke? Did I not pull it? No, I didn't. Clarke, get serious. Here, I'll just Google it, but I'll try not to shake the camera. Nosferatu crossed $100 million at the global box office. And I just think that is so cool, because Nosferatu is a very specific type of movie made by a very specific type of filmmaker, and kudos to Focus Films and their marketing department. And, you know, just the rollout of all of this was so impressive, and people are showing up. People want to see it. And they made it an event. And I am just like so impressed. I'm just so impressed. What's impressive is that the film from Focus Features and Robert Eggers surpassed the milestone after 10 days of release. Again, I think a Christmas release, counter-programming. You know, I guess we didn't really have a huge Christmas movie this year, right? We had a lot of Thanksgiving movies. We had Gladiator and Wicked, obviously. But yeah, and then I guess Moana, but not a lot of big Christmas releases. So I guess the counter programming really, really helped. But yeah, this is just in case you guys didn't know, especially post-COVID, a theatrical take of $100 million is even more impressive. So, and it's R-rated, and it's slow, and it's gothic, and it's like, and it's gross, and it's sexy, and it's all these things. So congratulations to Team Nosferatu. I think that is very, very, very cool. Let's see. Kevin says, I saw it on a digital screen just to avoid it. Mirror Domain says, what do you make of? Yes, okay. I think it's fair. I think there's a big Fangoria cover out currently that shows you Bill Skarsgård's Count Orlok. So let's talk about it. Mirror Domain says, what do you, and if you want to prevent a spoiler, I suppose, in terms of what Orlok looks like, cover your ears. What do you make of people not liking Orlok's mustache? I don't think it was that big of an issue. For some, it breaks him from the film. For this version of the story, I thought it worked. And then I thought I saw somebody, Sonic Ferratu. Yeah. Hey, Nick, great to see you. Yeah. And then Lowell points out the thing that I think a lot of people have said, which is he looks like Dr. Robotnik for sure. So here's what I think. When I will say that the look has grown on me. I will say that I found it less distracting the more I accepted what he looked like. Here's the other thing, and this is going to sound so like nerdy, but when I associate hair with somebody being healthy, and so the idea that they're going out of their way to tell me that Orlok is this decaying like creature that is, you know, like wheezing and literally falling apart. And yet he has a big mustache. And did you notice that it is dark brown? I was like, is Orlok dyeing his mustache? Because the hair on his head is very gray. Why is his mustache dark brown? I don't understand. So, yes. The other thing I will say, and I still stand by this, is that when I first saw it, I thought, mustaches are not scary. And I know that a lot of world conquerors in the past had mustaches, but now they're just not scary. They're not. So now, historically accurate, we know Robert Eggers is like, you know, Vlad the Impaler and Ivan the Terrible, and like we know, you know. Another Mr. Lizard says, just Ferratu for men. Yes, exactly. And I will say, and I'm not trying to be hack in the slightest, but when I first saw the movie, I was like, he looks like Dr. Robotnik. Like I thought the exact same thing. But it wasn't so silly that it like ripped me out, but I will of the experience, but I will say like, yeah, on the first go around, every time I saw him, I kind of was like, yeah, wow, a mustache, huh? Like, that's interesting. So I will say that having seen it 3 times, it doesn't distract me anymore. But I don't love it. I've accepted it. Now, this is to say too, by the way, I am like not saying that they needed to try to replicate the Max Schreck look. I don't necessarily think that's true. However, I also think that if you're going to be so fiercely loyal, like that was interesting to me how, and that's the only other ding I really have for the movie is that the second half of the movie is just like essentially the 1922 movie. And, you know, there's a lot of like, you know, Ellen and all of that going on, you know, they tell us something and then you've got Dr. Sievers and you've got Willem Dafoe over here, and then they learn what we just saw. So it's a lot of like this scene and that scene. It's the same scene. And this scene and that scene. It's the same scene. So like, again, fiercely loyal. So then it does beg the question, well, if you're going to be so loyal to the material, then like, why don't you stay loyal to the creature design, which is, you know, arguably some of the most iconic stuff. But that said, all good. It's fine. C'est la vie. Gishgali says, I wonder if the pandemic was the best thing to happen to horror in years. So many small horror films got theatrical releases that otherwise wouldn't have. Maybe horror on the big screen is back. I really hope you're right. What a great segue. let's talk about Heart Eyes. Let's do it. Yeah, I think that, oh wait, but I have to say, I want you to share view tab. How does this work? Here we go. Share tab instead. There we go. I'm learning, y'all. Gishgali, I don't think you're wrong. I think that it was a great opportunity for small horror movies to get wide theatrical releases. The two biggest examples I can think of are Terrifier 2 and Smile. And Smile turned out to be a huge franchise. And, Terrifier 2 turned out to be a huge franchise. Scream, obviously, the success of the first Scream movie back with Radio Silence. Like, yeah, I mean, I think you're not wrong. I think you're not wrong. And, even Malum had a quick theatrical run in I know that the team really wanted more theaters, but it's a long story. But either way, and then Evil Dead Rise, arguably very successful financially, because it had the opportunity to be in theaters for a long time. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Hi, Yogurt Garrel. Great to see you. Oh my gosh, it's been so long. Hi. Okay, let's talk about Heart Eyes. Heart Eyes. So, full disclosure, one of my dear friends, Michael Kennedy, wrote this movie. But y'all, this trailer slaps. So, if you tuned in to Fear HQ back in the day, you know that we teamed up with, why am I forgetting? Not Activision. But we did a watch along with Sam and Josh Rubin of Werewolves Within, and love Werewolves Within. So good. If you haven't seen it, you must. Yogurt Girl says, I just watched Malum and it scared me quite a bit, and you were great. Thank you. That's so nice. And Sam says, I missed the most anticipated of 2025, but watched it after the fact this year. Has a lot of good stuff coming. It does. So let's give it up for, Hard Eyes, an original slasher movie. Chris Landon, Michael Kennedy, the team that brought you Freaky, which again, I know Michael is one of my dear, dear, dear friends, but I love Freaky. I love Freaky. And Michael, of course, had a movie come out last year called It's a Wonderful Knife. Super fun, high concept slasher. And then here comes Hard Eyes. I think this is so good for not only horror, but for slasher movies. Screen Gems is all in on this. And it's an original movie. How exciting, with an original killer. How great. And I think this trailer is awesome. So, okay, let's try to watch it. Let's see. And I think I made it so that I could share sound. But here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to press play. Okay, did you guys hear that? And was it too loud? Just chime in the chat. Mike Joy says, Hard Eyes looks like a great movie for Valentine's Day. I agree. Yeah, and also I love that the Hard Eyes killer is going after couples. Great. As a single person, I'm like, thank you. Let's kill some couples on Valentine's Day. You know what I mean? No, I'm kidding. Don't really. That was a joke. I'm in the context of the movie, not real life. Anyway, great concept. You guys can hear it. Awesome. Okay, let's watch. Oops. Oh, the meet cute. You're just too good to be true. Yes. Can't take my eyes off of you. So romantic. You'd be like heaven to touch. Oh no. Look at these visuals too. So smart. So smart.
For the past 2 years, a masked maniac known as the Hard Eyes Killer has stalked.
That's the part I would have auditioned for. The newscaster.
With no motive yet uncovered. This is more than just murder.
Or The Cop,
He's like
but
Cupid.
I'm not famous enough to audition for The Cop.
With
Here's what I'll tell you, although, Jordana Brewster. Yeah, of course Jordana Brewster's getting that part, and I'm auditioning for the newsreader. This movie shot in New Zealand. I did not audition for this movie, although I would have loved to. I paused it because I wanted to point out, if you are tuning into slasher movies for some great kills, Michael and Chris and Josh will deliver. Let's just say that. They love the subgenre. They know exactly what they're doing. Love it. Love it. I love this trailer so much.
You're being chased by a fucking serial killer.
Oh, sorry. There's swear words.
Hey, you good?
Yeah.
I'm loving Mason Gooding
He's
too.
gonna keep killing people.
He's great in the Scream movies as a romantic lead. I'm just loving it. He's great. Great trailer. Great. So good. Hell yeah.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy B-Day!
Get killed, all right. What was...
Why would he say that?
Look at that. The joy I feel. The joy I feel. Oh boy. So good, right? What a great trailer. Yeah, it's Nick Mitford says his trailer is beautifully put together. Lowell says, I've never felt more relieved to be single. You and me both, Lowell. Yogurt Girl says, haha, yes, couples beware. Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding. Sam says, I dug Freaky, and I think it was one of the few to watch it in theaters. Oh, that's great. I know that they were so disappointed that they didn't get a real theatrical release. Of course, it came out November 13th, 2020. So poor Michael. But yes, the rest of the movies have gotten theatrical releases, so that's good. Kevin says, I still want a February 13th, Friday the 13th movie during a blizzard. That's great. Andrew Thomas says, Halloween franchise, my favorite slasher franchise. Getting notes of The Collector. Yeah, Mirror Domains. That's definitely visually, there's some similarities. Sam, did you say Evil Dies Tonight a couple of other weeks ago in the chat? Was that you? Anybody who throws an Evil Dies Tonight out there is always going to get a big laugh from me. It's just so funny. Nick says the design for Hard Eyes is so original. It has real legs and the ability to break out. I agree. Mirror Domain says looks solid. We love that song. Can't Take My Eyes Off You here in New Jersey, says ZSH. I love that song too, actually. It's a good one. Colibre says something to truly look forward to. Breakout is in crossover to the mainstream. Yeah, totally. Andrew Thomas says I want a Michael Myers Christmas horror movie. Boy, that's a mashup, eh? Alvi says holiday themed horror movies always hits. Yeah, agreed. So keep an eye out. I think this movie is going to be everywhere. Honestly, I think you guys are not going to be able to miss it. But Valentine's Day this year, original horror movie, written and directed by three really great guys. Like I know all of those guys a little. I know Josh. I don't know him a little. I know him a little. He was going to come on Wolfe's Call. And then you know what happened? My grandmother died, I think. Yeah. Oh, no. That wasn't it. I booked Malum, I think. And then, I don't know. Anyway, doesn't matter. Point is, Josh Rubin's lovely. He's a great actor. He's a great director. Michael Kennedy is one of my besties. So proud and happy for him. And Chris Landon is a doll. He's, gosh, what a wonderful writer-director Chris Landon is. Do I know if it has an international release? That is a great question. Let's look it up. Heart Eyes release. Okay. Hard Eyes. Canada. Oh no, those are titles. I don't. But you know what? I'll tell you this. Nick, I teased that I was working on booking interviews for the show last week, and I'll just tell you that it was Michael and Chris and Josh. So hopefully they'll be on in the next couple of weeks, and we'll get an answer for you, Nick, on UK or Ireland. And I'll also text Michael and I'll ask him. Alvi says releasing February 7th is smart because if it has good word of mouth, I bet people will really show up on Valentine's Day. I think you're right, Alvi. I think you're right. Okay, let's move on to the next thing that I have planned. Do you like how I actually have show notes this time? Y'all are very good for being patient with me. Okay, should we do Welcome to Derry? I know this is a lot of horror though. I've got some Wicked here. I'll let you vote. I've got the Batman. Oh, we should probably talk about the Batman, right? Let's do the Batman and then we'll hop on over to Welcome to Derry because then I'll nerd out. That was the thing that made me like, I got to do the stream. I got to do the stream this week. Okay. So Welcome to Derry. No. Sorry, I said Wicked. We're gonna do Wicked. I'm just so interested in Welcome to Derry, apparently, that I can't help myself. Oops, I deleted. Hold on one second. I'll share my screen. Wicked. Here we go. Cool. All right. So there's a couple of little nuggets in here. Oh wait, sorry. I gotta share screen. I gotta do this. Hold on. Add to stage. There we go. Welcome to Derry. Yeah, take your Lactaid. What if they gave you complimentary Lactaid when you entered Derry? Okay, let's talk about Wicked. Wicked director John M. Chu defends for good. Sequel title, Who Wants a Movie Called Wicked Part 1? Or excuse me, Part 2, but Freudian slip. What a very funny thing to say. Who wants a movie called Wicked Part 2? Well, I don't know, John. Who wants a movie called Wicked Part 1? I mean, not to be whatever, but this is kind of funny. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about it. Guys, chat, sorry. Something else that I did. Okay, on Tuesday night, before everything really, Pacific Palisades was absolutely happening at that time. But I got to see Wicked on stage at the Hollywood Pantages Theater. Yeah, I thank you so much, everybody in chat, for agreeing with me about Wicked Part 1. So I had the opportunity to see Wicked, the musical, in previews in 2003 as a Wizard of Oz stan. My high school boyfriend at the time, he was at NYU and I was a senior in high school. And so I went up to visit him to New York, and his mom got us these incredible tickets to this little show that was based on the Wizard of Oz and about the Wicked Witch of the West called Wicked. She didn't know what it was. And if you'll recall, or if you didn't know this, Wicked actually was just shredded by critics when it came onto stage, and of course became a phenomenon. But that show was not a sure thing, and it was not a safe bet. And the critics hated it, and I got to see it in previews, and I don't remember any of it really. I remember the cast. I remember seeing Joel Grey because I was such a huge Cabaret fan. I still am. So he played the original wizard. And but at that time, I didn't, even though Adina had obviously been in Rent and Kristen Chenoweth was, I didn't really know the rest of the cast very well. So that said, I saw Wicked a couple years ago when it came to the Pantages, but it was so awesome to see the stage show for me, sandwiched in between Wicked Part 1 and Wicked for Good. Because, and I've read the book, I love all iterations of this story, but I had forgotten a lot. Yes, Kishkali, you're right. I didn't know who Adele Dazeem was at that time either. ZSH, maybe we did. So I forgot a lot of what happened in act 2, but that's not me being shady, because obviously I remembered, you know, the music. So the story is the music is in this, the story is in the music, right? So I kind of, oh, hey, Will Status, great to see you. So I knew what happened, and I knew it ran parallel with The Wizard of Oz, but I didn't remember all the details. This is to say, I now am so curious. I have two things to say. The first one is, I really enjoyed Wicked Part 1, and I think that the creative and dialogue expansions that the team made and created for the movie for Part 1 was a great idea. I love all the character development. I would say that they are like, I should actually rephrase. I think that they are differences between the stage show and the movie, not necessarily changes, right? So this is to say that Part 2 or Act 2 has a lot of room to do some awesome stuff. Now, I am Unpopular Opinions with Clarke Wolfe is my other show. Not really, but we've kind of, if you've been following me for a while, you know that I always joke that I should have a show called Unpopular Opinions with Clarke Wolfe. I think the common refrain of like, oh, well, act 1 of Wicked is so great and then act 2 kind of stinks. I don't think that's true at all. I actually think that they are very complementary, but I'm also the person who loves seasons 5 through 7 of Buffy. You know what I mean? I don't mind, I like the darkness. I like the dark stuff. I like the complexity of the relationships between Elphaba and Glinda. I don't think that I think there's a lot of gray area in terms of the goodness of both Elphaba and Glinda. And and I think it's really easy to say, oh, I would be so altruistic and all of these things when, I don't think that's necessarily true. So I am really, really excited to see what they do with Wicked for Good. However, here's the other thing that I want to say, and that is, hold on, let's let chat chime in for a second. Nick says, I think there's a lot of work to do to not make part 2 drag a little. There is a huge amount of plot without much spectacle of songs in the second half of the play. Nick, do you think so? Because No Good Deed is like, No Good Deed, my audience on Tuesday night, and what's cool about that is it's emotion and it's lighting on stage, right? No, Elphaba's not flying during that song. Uh-oh. Okay. Shush. Wait, no. This says an evacuation warning has been issued in my area, but I don't think that's my area. Hold on, let's pause. That's how you know it's live. Let's take a look and make sure it does not mean exactly where I currently am right this moment. Okay, it does not. What a time we are in. Tell me more. Oy vey. No, it doesn't mean where I am currently. Okay, so this can wait. Act 2, No Good Deed. Emotion and lighting, it brought the house down. And what is it called? As Long as You're Mine? I mean, come on. Now here's the thing, and this was my second point. And I'm gonna, let's see. There is a huge amount. Okay, we did that. Gishgali says, I'm slowly working my way through it. I don't love it, but I could not be more impressed with John M. Chu. He crushed it, knocked it out of the park. Nick says, I am 1 billion% in for UO with CW. Sam says there are less songs in Act 2, but I personally like that since it takes time. Yeah, I do too. Yogurt Girl says, I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've seen the stage show and I'm looking forward to seeing how it's adapted. Lowell says, I'm not ready for Cynthia and Ariana to sing For Good. Nick says, No Good Deed and For Good are amazing, but the first half is stacked. Totally. Oh, but you know what, Nick? Also, gosh, I keep interrupting myself, but I think this is a good point. You know what other song I freaking love is I couldn't be happier. I just, and this is what I mean by the movie has such a great opportunity to really expand the story, the scenes, the dialogue. Like, you know, Couldn't Be Happier is a great song for character development, for plot, for Glinda. And I think Ariana Grande, who impressed me so much in part one, is you know, like really, I think she's going to absolutely crush this. And I think I can't wait to see the dynamics. Like, of course, we all love the song For Good, and we know that Cynthia Erivo and Ariana Grande have become very, very, very close friends. That said, I forgot how much conflict between Glinda and Elphaba there is in the show. And so in order for them to sing that beautiful ballad together, they got to break up. So I think that that's where I think that there is so much potential and opportunity to really do something special and expansive here. Who was it? Okay, but Lowell, and this is exactly what my point was going to be. As Long as You're Mine alone is going to give the movie a PG-13 rating. Here's the thing, y'all. Is part two, or For Good, going to get a PG-13 rating? Are they going to go for the PG-13 rating? Here's the biggest ding I have against part one. And it is not a mistake or a criticism, because the movie knows exactly what it is and what its tone is, and it commits to it. But I will say, having loved this book and this show and these roles for so long, I was a little disappointed. Not disappointed is the wrong word, but it's the one thing I would have maybe liked to see them do a little differently, is let Elphaba be a little scarier. Let Elphaba, you know, be a little more abrasive, because she is kind of mad and she's hurt and she's upset. And I think that is integral to part of her character. I think it was a choice to allow Elphaba to, of course, I think Cynthia just has so much like dignity, and she kind of her Elphaba rises above it until she can't, and she gets upset. But it's more of like a reaction that scares her, whereas I think Elphaba on stage is more willing to be scary. Because you have to remember, we are creating this character based off of the Wicked Margaret Hamilton's The Wicked Witch of the West. And the memory that we all have if you're a kid and you see The Wizard of Oz, it is likely that The Wicked Witch of the West is the first thing to scare you, right? Cinematically. And The Wicked Witch of the West and Margaret Hamilton's performance, it is scary. She is scary in The Wizard of Oz. And she is, pardon the pun or whatever, not to be too on the nose, not really a pun, not to be too on the nose, but like, she is wicked, And so I didn't see in part one any glimpses or glimmers of Elphaba being scary. And so, but the reason that I don't have a problem with that is because the movie committed to that version of these characters and it got its PG rating. I don't know how you don't get a PG-13 rating knowing the source material. So I am hopeful that if they do get a PG-13 rating, they really have a PG-13 rating and they push just a little bit. I don't want it to be, and nobody's going to do this. They love the material so much, but like, I don't, it doesn't have to be a stark contrast from part one and for good, but I do think that it needs to go a little harder. Let's see. Steve says 2 original songs will be in part 2. Nick says, I agree. Elphaba is a dark character and part 2 needs to reflect that to work. She's the Wicked Witch of the West that scared me witless when I was a kid. Yes, exactly. Oh, that's interesting, Lowell. Sometimes I feel like too many kids' movies these days are afraid to have their villains be evil and scary. They always have to make them complex or misunderstood. Very interesting. Gishgali says, I am at the point where Elphaba shows up to the ball and does that freaky dance, and I found that really scary. I will be honest and say that scene does not work for me, and we'll leave it at that. Gishgali says, I feel like she was cursing everyone. Sam, oh, this is an interesting point. Sam says, with respect to characters being scary, in the 21st century. Elphaba is scary in the show, I will say. She's not afraid to be scary. Anyway, this is Wicked Chat. This concludes our Wicked Corner. There was a little more. There was a little bit more in this article that I wanted to share. Oh, yes, that's what it was. This made me laugh. Ryan Reynolds. Wicked is a musical, and I feel that they've been very open about that, which is hilarious because, as we know, Mean Girls was a secret musical, which don't even get me started on that marketing campaign. What a mess. But yeah, that made me laugh. I thought that was funny. Okay. Oh, that's so funny, ZSH. Tay Diggs and Adina. That's hilarious. What a time. Oh, yeah. In some kind of artist loft. It was well over a decade ago. Are you confusing that with Rent? Are you thinking of Rent? Are you just thinking of Rent? Nick says, oh, this is a great point. This is where the UK rating system is more flexible. We have 12 and 12A. That allows more adult themes without hitting commercials. That's really interesting. Yeah, Sam, the dance is in the show, but you know what? Here's something really interesting about the dance, because as I said, the scene didn't work for me in the movie. Because it is very earnest, and in the show it is comedy. It is Elphaba is like, okay, if I'm going to be at your dance, then I'm going to dance. I'm going to like not take it seriously. And then Galinda goes in and she's like, okay, well, I'm going to dance silly too. And then they just kind of have a little dance party between the two of them. And of course, in the movie, it is much more serious. So again, it's a choice. It's a choice, and the movie commits to its choices, which, makes me feel like, okay, like meaning I'm always okay with that if the movie commits to the choice. But it was a choice. So, all right. Is it time for Welcome to Derry? Is it time for Welcome to Derry? Finally, yay. All right. In case you missed it, there is a TV show coming to HBO Max/Max. I don't know what we're calling it anymore. I'm not even being funny. Like, I just really don't know. But we don't know when it's coming. We know it's coming this year, and we know that it is a 9-episode series that will serve as a prequel to Stephen King's horror classic, It. Andy and Barbara Muschietti are back. Jason Fuchs is on board, as is Bill Skarsgård. So it is not greenlit, according to this article, for all 3 seasons. Obviously, the first season has to be, a success. But Welcome to Derry. Let's just, for a recap, for any of you who don't know or don't care, I'll fill you in real fast. Welcome to Derry will kick off its story in 1962 in the time leading up to the events of It Chapter 1. From there, though, Muschietti teases that the second and third seasons will jump back in time and take place in their own distant decades. Y'all, this is music to my ears. Now, as you all know, I am a huge It fan. I love this book. Yes, Mike, great question. Why go back in time? Why not forward in time? I'll tell you. In the book, and admittedly, this part is not really, they don't really get into this in the movie, but in the book, Pennywise is more of, he exasperates things. He draws out all of your worst impulses, all of humanity's worst impulses, and he magnifies them. So this is important because in the history of Derry, which Mike Hanlon writes, and his father, of course, is a keeper of a lot of history of Derry. And then Mike talks to a lot of people because, again, if this happens every 27 years or so, you're trying to figure out why. You're trying to figure out, if it's avoidable, if it's stoppable, where and why is this happening in Derry? So, as a result, there are these wonderful moments and interludes in the book that show the history of Derry being influenced by Pennywise. And I just feel like one of my favorite things about all of Stephen King lore is that when you get the opportunity to read the history of a town that Stephen King has thought of, it's just so, it's so vivid and interesting. He does it with It. He does it with Salem's Lot. He does it with The Shining and the history of the Overlook. And I think that's really important because I think what he's telling us is history. If you don't know your history, you'll be doomed to repeat it. And I also think he's telling us that human beings haven't evolved as much as maybe we think we have. But nonetheless, some of my favorite stuff in It is in these interludes. And so, yeah, that's what he's talking about. So he says, so they talk about, now I think this is really telling too. So let's talk about it. The first season so here he says, the first season is 1962, the second season is 1935, and the third season is 1908. Well, let's look at this. The quote is, so they talk about catastrophic events from the past, like the fire in the Black Spot, the massacre of the Bradley gang, a gang of bank robbers in the 1930s, and the explosion of the Kitchener Ironworks. Every time Pennywise comes out of hibernation, there is a catastrophic event that happens in the beginning of that cycle. So y'all, what this is telling me is that the Black Spot is not happening in season 1 of Welcome to Derry. There were a lot of fans who felt, and I totally agree with this, that Mike Hanlon's character in the movies kind of got sidelined. And to not feature the Black Spot, which is one of the most famous sequences in all of Stephen King's writing, and is one of the, as we were discussing with Pennywise, the idea that Pennywise exacerbates and brings out all of the worst impulses in humanity. That includes racism. And the Black Spot is a massacre of Black soldiers that happened in Derry. It's brutal. It's horrifying. It is one of the scariest and worst things that I've ever read in all of Stephen King's books. And so, but it is seminal to Mike Hanlon and his history. And so, and they allude to it in, I think it's chapter 1, they allude to it. But they don't, Chosen Jacobs, who plays Mike Hanlon, has a monologue. And he kind of talks about this idea of the Black Spot. So I think a lot of us thought, okay, they're setting it in the 1960s. We're gonna just basically retrofit or move the Black Spot up in the timeline, the way that they moved, the losers from the 1950s to the 1980s. But it seems to me like what Andy is saying is that, they talk about catastrophic events from the past, like the fire in the Black Spot, which would have been the 1930s, right? No, maybe he's not. Maybe he is saying, I don't know, y'all. What do you think? The Bradley gang, which is one of my favorites. I love the Bradley Gang. It's so scary. It's so messed up. And the Kitchener Ironworks. So anyway, that's why I go back in time. I'm confused by your reaction. I remember we discussed extensively on Wolf's Call how Welcome to Derry was about the black spot. Yeah, but I thought that's what he was saying, is that it's not. Hey, Armada. Hi, Alvi. What do you think, Gishgali? Am I misinterpreting his quote? Tell me, please, you tell me. Anyway, though, why I'm excited about this is because, yeah, this is the most interesting stuff to me. I love it. I know Ronan. Clarke, a horror fan? I don't believe it. Do you think these episodes are going to be... hey, Chris, good to see you. Do you think these episodes... And I hope you're staying safe, too. Do you think these episodes are going to be its own self-contained thing, or will it lead to something? I think it's going to be a complement to the movies, but I think that, you know, it's going to be its own contained standalone thing. Yeah. So yeah, I'm excited about this nonetheless. I'm really curious about season 1. I can't quite tell how original it's going to. Also, by the way, how original it's going to be. Also, we talked about it extensively. What we did talk about extensively for sure, Gishgali, was the idea that what was I going to say? Oh, about the history of. Oh yeah. We even watched the scene. We watched Kirk Acevedo's audition scene where he talks about eating the baby, and we know that Bill Skarsgård shot that scene. And for those of you who don't know, in the book because Pennywise has been around for forever. He's an interdimensional being, and he has been around for just eons, centuries and centuries, especially in Derry. So there's a scene that's kind of like when these settlers come to Derry, and they establish a colony. It's kind of like the lost city of Roanoke within the history of the book, as in all of the colonists just disappear. So, but there is a scene where Pennywise steals and eats a baby, and allegedly Bill Skarsgård shot the scene, but it never made it into any of the movies. And so I think a lot of fans also thought, now that Bill is back, that that we were going to see that scene. So much you can do with this. Okay. Welcome to Derry News achieved. What should we do next? Oh, should we do... Well, wait, let's do the Batman. I will alternate between horror things and regular things. Boop. Let's talk about the Batman. So, of course, as you guys know, but in case you don't, last week, the Batman was delayed about a year, till 2027, because Matt Reeves is still working on the script. And obviously those movies are very involved. They take a long time to shoot. They take a lot of time to do the effects as well in post-production. So there was a lot of question about what is going on within the greater DC universe and with Matt Reeves, the Batman. So James Gunn, who along with Peter Safran is sort of overseeing the DC universe for Warner Brothers, and he was on a podcast where he talked about if Robert Pattinson's The Batman is going to become the Batman of the DC universe, or if he's going to be Elseworlds, and it's going to be like its own thing. So, James has said that on Happy, Sad, Confused that he's contemplated bringing Robert Pattinson into the DC universe, but Superman is the official launch pad of this iteration of the DC universe. And James says, I've contemplated it. I contemplate everything and I talk about everything. And I will say that's something that I think fans know to be true about James, is that he is very, he kind of does consider all his options. And he I think he's considered all the scenarios and considered a lot of different things. So this goes on to say that Gunn stressed at the time that he is, quote, committed to telling both stories in the DCU and the Elseworld stories, which again, those are the isolated, stories. So Robert Pattinson's Batman and Colin Farrell's, Penguin can be over here, and then James's Superman and all of that universe can be over here. And he says, I want the freedom to tell Elseworld stories. Okay, great. Which I think too is a good way to set it up. Like, I have to be honest with you. Like, I think part of the reason the rollout of the former iteration of the DCU was not the most, it was a bit incohesive, or not cohesive, is because it was sort of retroactively, oh, well, it's actually this universe is over here and this universe is over here, when the goal allegedly was to keep them all within the same universe. So let's see, Mirror Domains, or Ronan says, for me, I prefer Matt Reeves' Batman to be its own thing and the DCU have its own Dark Knight. That signals that he's committing to Elseworld stories. Nick says, the Batman delays are no big thing for that particular franchise, but it's a real problem for the wider DC universe, especially when Penguin marches on. It's just too confusing for the mainstream. And Yogurt Garrel says, I thought Pattinson was amazing as Batman, so I'll be patiently waiting for 2027. Well, so we did go on, they at the Golden Globes, Matt Reeves was asked about all of this. And he said, he kind of left it open as well. But then James kind of brought up on the podcast, I believe, the idea about the sequels. Let's see. The Batman is expected to go into production this year. Warner Brothers announced last month. Gunn then defended, this was on Threads. Gunn then defended the pushback, explaining to fans on Threads that it's fairly common for big budget titles to have lengthy gaps before a sequel is released. To be fair, a 5-year gap is more fairly common in sequels. 7 years between Alien and Aliens, 14 years between Incredibles, 7 years between the first two Terminators, 13 years between Avatars, 36 years between Top Guns, and of course, 6 years between Guardians Volume 2 and 3. I will say that, I do think that audiences kind of have I think it's a double-edged sword. I think in some ways, audiences kind of expect, they're very used to the planning and plotting that has gone into, let's say, the MCU for the last 20 years. And so they expect a certain type of rollout. But I will also say on the other side of that, and this is how I'm more inclined to, believe that about audiences right now, is that I do think that let absence make the heart grow fonder, especially theatrically. I think let people miss things, let people have fond memories. And, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing for movies, especially big movies. ZSH says, I've been quietly saying for many years that our Pats is the millennial Brad Pitt. Oh, interesting. Not sure what that means, but feel like it does mean something. That's funny, ZSH. Good. Sam says, all I have is the Batman equals good and the Penguin equals good. Hope they keep up with the Batman part 2. Totally agree, Sam. Totally agree. Oh, that's, yeah, well, No. Sam, no. Or sorry, another Mr. Lizard. No. James left Marvel in between Volume 1 and Volume 2. And then he came back for Volume 2, and then he closed everything out with the holiday special and Volume 3. Please correct me if I'm wrong, chat, but I'm pretty sure that's how it went. Mirror Domains, that's a good point. If we were waiting this long, I want the script for the third one done too. Yeah, good point. Good point. Yeah, Nick, our Pats is going to have such a big year with Mickey 17. And then Mirror Domain says, I don't want to wait another 6 years for part 3. Yep, I don't disagree with any of that. I think that's all accurate. Let's see. Shall we now go to, oh my God, well, since we're talking about The Dark Knight, wait, everyone wait. We have to talk about this. Y'all. Alvi says, I thought Gunn left between Guardians 2 and 3, and then we get Suicide Squad. I don't know. I don't know. But you know what? Either way, he brought, here's what I'll say, Alvi, you may be right, but James used it as the example. So I suppose, maybe he, I don't know. He used it as the example, so we'll just go with it. Okay. Speaking of Dark Knights, we have to talk about this. This was insane. And I feel a little bit like a stand-up comedian right now, but did you guys see this? Did you hear about this? Armie Hammer set for the lead role in U-Boal's vigilante thriller, The Dark Knight. Okay, here's the thing. Let's leave Armie Hammer's personal situation out of the equation because it is what it is. Who does this? Lead role in U-Boal's vigilante thriller, The Dark Knight. Vigilante thriller, The Dark Knight. This exactly, Mr. Lizard. He was going to be Batman once upon a time for George Miller. Exactly. And Gishgali, yes. Armie says he's getting so many offers that he's turning down work. You aren't turning down work to be in a Dr. U-Boal movie. Okay. When I saw this, when I read this, I was floored because I had been like loosely following the Armie. I mean, I definitely was following his personal situation. I'm not going to lie. And also, I'm trying to expand Sending the Wolf to include just more pop culture, not just, movies and TV, but pop culture in general. So I do think this is fair game to talk about. I don't want to get into necessarily like the allegations and whatever, but Armie Hammer is making a comeback. Okay. I'm not saying that's good or bad, but to Gishgali's point, I had read that headline too. He has been on his podcast being like, yeah, just turning down roles. I'm just turning down work left and right. And then the big Variety exclusive was, I'm going to make a movie called The Dark Knight when, yes, I almost played Batman, but don't worry, it's not a Batman movie, but it is a vigilante movie. And it's directed by a director that does not have a great track record. This blew my mind, and it made me laugh very hard that he teed up, oh yeah, I'm turning stuff down. And then, and also a vigilante thriller called The Dark Knight. What are we doing? And why would, you have to be very delulu to think that this is a good idea. This is just call it something else. It's weirdly icky and misleading. This story was absolutely wild. Yogurt Girl says it's so wild. Steve Cauldron says U-Boal is not a great director, not a direct quote. Sam says the whole Hammer family seems sketch. Uwe Boll, you're right. You know what? You're right. Thank you for reminding me, Gishgali. That is correct. I have it the way my high school brain remembers mispronouncing. You're correct. Surely The Dark Knight is trademarked to the WB and DC. I mean, No, I don't think so, but who knows? Who knows? Nick says they won't allow it. And Yogurt Garrel says definitely feels icky. Another Mr. Lizard says my money is on it will be called something else, but a good way to draw attention to a bad project. That is 100% true. It could be a stunt. Let's keep reading. Hammer is set to play the crime-fighting titular character. Crime-fighting! Hilarious. Just like, I can't stop. I can't stop. This is wild. Scheduled to begin principal photography in Croatia in January, on January 27th. So financed. What a time. Just truly, what a time. Yes, and I think it is worth mentioning, after a lengthy probe, Los Angeles prosecutors in 2023 declined to charge the actor with any crimes. Yes, in a recent podcast interview, Hammer had said that his acting career has picked up so much that he started to turn jobs down. Quote, my dance card's getting pretty full. That first job that I turned down after 4 years of this, I mean, it was the best feeling I've ever had. In The Dark Knight, based on an original script by Bull, Hammer plays Sanders, who takes justice into his own hands as he sets out to hunt down criminals, while his crusade transforms him into a social media sensation and a hero in the eyes of the public. The local police chief sees him as a menace to society and aims to take him down. The story of The Dark Knight couldn't be a more current topic, and I'm excited to bring it to life with this excellent cast, said Bull, whose recent films include the crime drama First Shift and the forthcoming migrant crisis thriller Run. This is so funny. I mean, truly, it is just like so trolly. While the new film's familiar title might conjure images of a certain caped crusader, executive producer Michael Roach pointed out that, quote, our movie is very different from Chris Nolan's movie, so there's no danger of confusion. Oh, gosh. Cool. Great. Yeah, no danger of confusion. Yeah. Okay. Let's see. Let's see what else. Mirror Domain says Hammer does have talent. I think I was one of the few that liked Death on the Nile, but I don't think people are rushing to sign him up for projects. Nick says, let me guess, he lives in a cave, he has a cool car, a lot of tech, and an English butler. Yeah. Another Mr. Yes. Bull is a terrible filmmaker, but also a terrific carnival barker. This is true. And we're all talking about it. I mean, there you go. We're having this conversation. It was wild, though. It was totally wild. And yes, another Mr. Lizard. There was a film adaptation of The Avengers, the British TV show. Yeah, that came out with Ralph Fiennes and Uma Thurman. And it was kind of confusing. Like, The Avengers? Like, the superheroes? No. The Avengers, like the British TV show. Okay, now it's time for 28 years later corner. Now, I was one of the people, sorry, I'm sitting in a weird chair. I was one of the people who 100% when the shot of the emaciated, rage-infected person in the 28 years later trailer rose up into frame, was like, is that Jim? As in the character that Cillian Murphy plays in the first film. And then, of course, some people are like, oh, it has to be. And then, of course, the actor came out and he was like, no, that's me. And it is a different actor. And let's find his name. Here he is. This is the actor, and wait, let's get his name. Angus Neal. So this is Angus Neal. Now then, of course, I said, okay, but fair. It wasn't actually Cillian Murphy, but could it have been Jim? Right? That was my point. And now we're here to learn that Cillian Murphy isn't in the first 28 Years Later film, but may appear later in the trilogy. I don't like to be a spoily person, but I thought we had paparazzi photos of Cillian on set. What do you guys think? Let's see. Yeah, Nick says it looks so much like Jim. Mirror says they have similar bone structure. Yogurt Carol says, I thought the same thing too. Yeah, so I don't know. I think my point still stands, but let's read on. The point of this is that Cillian is not in the first 28 Years Later trailer. But there are 3 movies. This was absolutely written to be a trilogy. And producer Andrew McDonald confirms to Empire that Cillian is not actually in 28 Years Later or not in the first film of the planned trilogy. Quote, on this, we wanted him to be involved and we wanted to be involved. He's not in the first film, but I'm hoping there will be some Jim somewhere along that line. Instead, Murphy's role for now is more behind the scenes. Quote, he's involved at the moment as an executive producer, and I would hope that we can work with him in some way in the future in the trilogy. That could mean in Nia DaCosta's already shot sequel, 28 Days Later, The Bone Temple, due in 2026, or in a third film, which will move ahead if the first film hits with audiences. Now, before we get to Angus, we also have this information that Danny Boyle will direct the third 28 Years Later movie. Now, y'all probably know that I had sort of wondered or was speculating like maybe Alex Garland will direct it if he wanted to. But of course, you all kind of chimed in and reminded us that like Alex Garland's like, man, I'm going to take a break from directing. But so this says that, let's see. Yes. Okay. So it says Fangoria reports from the article with Empire. There's a catch. The third and final movie won't go into production until audiences respond to the first film. However, given the viral reaction to the very first trailer, we have no doubt that both 28 Years Later and The Bone Temple will do exceedingly well. After all, Boyle's 28 Days Later grossed over $85 million worldwide upon release in 2002. So yeah, there you have it. So yeah, maybe Danny Boyle will be back. But let's see. Mirror says, I'm fine with each one being separate stories. Same. Kind of like what World War Z was supposed to be. Looking forward to Aaron Taylor Johnson in this too. Nick says the second film in the trilogy was already shot. I didn't know that. Yes. That I did know. And then Sam says, okay, the Nia DaCosta movie title is confusing me since it doesn't match the pattern of the rest. Yes. And then ZSH says, I want to know a lot more about how it was all filmed on an iPhone Pro. And if you'll remember, the original 28 Days Later was one of the first big movies or mainstream movies to be shot on digital, which I think Danny Boyle has just been such a pioneer in so many ways. But yeah, and then shooting the new movie on an iPhone is, yeah, wild. So lots to look forward to here for sure. I'm really, I agree that, again, with the Wicked for Good part 1 and then Wicked for Good. I don't know why you do a part 1 and then you don't do a part 2. Or why don't you just do Wicked and then do Wicked : for Good? I don't know. Maybe because they want people to know that more is coming. Whatever. But I do agree that 28 Years Later, The Bone Temple is an interesting title. However, the only thing that I'll add is sort of like, well, in defense of that, what comes after years? If they are not jumping hundreds of years into the future, or decades into the future, then, understandable why you can't really follow that pattern. But the sun is starting to go down. Okay. So yeah. And then, yes, Angus Neal, the man who inadvertently set the internet alight. This is so funny. Okay. Uh, kudos isn't just due to extra Angus Neal, the man who inadvertently set the internet alight. Some should also go to Danny Boyle's partner, who had tried to warn him that audiences would see Neal and assume they'd spotted a worse for wear Jim. Quote, I showed my girlfriend the trailer and she said, people will think that's Killian, the director said. I said, don't be silly. I ignored her, so I've eaten a bit of humble pie since then. I mean, yeah, that looks a lot like Killian for sure. Like, good on Danny Boyle's girlfriend. She gave him the business. She told him what's what. And yeah, another Mr. Lizard, don't Google Bone Temple. That just cracked me up about that. So, all right, that's our 28 years later corner. What else should we look at? Oh, yeah. Wait, let's talk about Carry On. Let's talk about Carry On, because I thought this was wild. Now, you guys have asked me multiple times if I've watched it yet, which I haven't. Oh, wait, hold on. But I want to. But I just thought this was a really interesting piece of movie news that was worth talking about. Kind of like how Anyone But You was $100+ million success at the box office, when I just was like, what? Why are we not talking about this? But Carry On enters Netflix's top 5 most viewed movies of all time. Director Jama Khalid Sarah says. No sequel talks yet. Y'all enjoyed this movie, right? Y'all enjoyed this movie. I think some of you in chat were like, oh, you should watch it. It's really, really fun. I just thought it was so interesting that an original film, or an original movie that was not a franchise movie and was just a good old fashioned thriller, has been so successful and caught on. I ask you, chat, did you see a ton of promotion for Carry On? Did you see like a lot of advertising for it? Because now, to be fair, I kind of haven't been using Netflix a ton lately. So if they were pushing it when you log onto the home screen, I wouldn't necessarily know. Also, Netflix thinks the only thing I watch is true crime documentaries, which is not true. I obviously watch movies and TV shows, but so it is also possible that they were not pushing it to me because, you know, they were pushing me the John Benet Ramsey documentary or something. So Mirror says Carry On was decent. Nick says Carry On is popcorn heaven. It's great fun. Mirror says a bit far-fetched at times. Gishgali says that movie was way better than it needed to be. The only promotion I saw was on Netflix's front page. Another Mr. Lizard says, I've not seen it yet, but Edgerton is always good value. And then Nick says, no advertising at all except for the Netflix home screen. I just think that's crazy, right? Isn't that so, you know, maybe there is something to like audiences. They see Jason Bateman, they see faces, they see Bateman, they see a thriller, they see a cool concept, and they see Taron Egerton, and they click and they watch. I mean, maybe it's as simple as that. And if that's the case, then more original movies, please. I love Jason Bateman. And also, I thought this was so funny that Jama, the director, which if you remember during our Orphan episode, I did look up how you pronounce his name, and I remember it was Jama. But he said, more than the numbers, it's seeing people's reactions to the movie. I started getting a lot of calls and texts from friends and people who didn't know I directed it. They didn't know until they saw the credits, and they were sending me texts that they loved it. I think at that moment, I knew the movie was finding an audience and catching on to it. So this is the other thing. Like, honestly, he's a very big director. So the notion that they just did no advertising, that people didn't know that he did the movie, I just think is crazy. You know, what can we do? CSH says, I feel like my younger Gen Z friends were clearly the target audience for it. Mike says, I still need to see Carry On. Nick says, the timing was perfect. Christmas drop, which will have huge viewing figures given by the pull of Netflix to, oh yeah, Squid Game 2. They know what they're doing. That is true. That is true. If you'll notice, actually, Nick, what a wonderful point you make. Wait. I was in here. Yes. So it says here that the action thriller reached the 5th spot on Tuesday. Red Notice is currently number 1, followed by Don't Look Up, The Atom Project. Wow, The Atom Project. Yes, I watched that with my parents. And Bird Box. So I remember for sure that Bird Box was a Thanksgiving release. It was a holiday release for sure. And that is, to your point, Nick, where I kind of had that same thought all those years ago. Oh, very smart. Put a PG-13 thriller that, not overly gory, not overly complicated, with a big movie star in it, and drop it at the holidays when everybody goes, okay, we've watched all the Christmas movies, we've eaten all the meals, we're still stuck with our parents or our families. What do? Let's watch something on Netflix. And then boom, here is a big movie, with movie stars. Gishgali says, I was totally sold on the premise. I wasn't even sure Jason Bateman was in it until I watched it. Yeah, I think that's awesome. That's cool. It's interesting for sure. Yeah. It's just one of those things where I just want to understand what, like, Netflix clearly, as Nick pointed out, I watched it with my 13-year-old. There it was, and we clicked yes. At the holidays, great opportunity to drop, these thrillers and whatever. I just don't know how you understand what the bar for success is with Netflix. I don't have any projects with Netflix, so it doesn't actually matter, but I just think I'm always kind of thinking of the business side of this and the notion that, I didn't see any advertising. Like, I didn't see any advertising. It sounds like no one in chat saw any advertising. It was just, okay, here's a drop on homepage. We click it. And I don't know. I just don't know. What can I do? Okay. Alvi says, I think people are just yearning for those mid-budget, solid, entertaining movies. 100%. Wouldn't it be wonderful, Alvi, if the lesson that Netflix learned from the success of Carry On was to make more mid-budget, entertaining movies? Wouldn't that be just wonderful? Mirror Domain says, Woman of the Hour is on Netflix too. I need to catch up with that one. I am in the minority in that I did not love Woman of the Hour, and I will leave it at that. All right. I guess the last thing I thought we could talk about was Drew Goddard. So we've got Daredevil coming. That's actually a good question. Daredevil new season. When does that come? March. Okay, cool. Great. I love Drew Goddard, big fan. Got to start with Buffy and, Cabin in the Woods and the whole deal. And so I love his stuff. I really enjoyed the early seasons of Daredevil on Netflix. And he kind of gave an overview about everything he was working on, including a new Matrix movie. And I did think that it was very interesting how he pointed out that there's not even a script. He's writing the script. Because I think there was a little bit of like a hubbub about Will Smith potentially starring in the new Netflix movie. And then that kind of getting debunked because there's not even a script. So they can't, I don't know. And then it kind of reminded me too of a couple of days ago or a day or two ago, I read a quote. I don't listen to Bret Easton Ellis's podcast. Bret Easton Ellis, of course, is the author who wrote American Psycho, Less Than Zero, so on. And he kind of chimed in and was like, yeah, I think the idea that Luca Guadagnino is directing a movie that Austin Butler is starring in based on American Psycho is all a little overblown. As in, the deal's not even done with Luca, and Austin Butler is not actually cast, that he kind of posited that the name was being floated publicly to kind of see what the reaction would be. I don't know if what any of this says, but I have to imagine that if the rights were sold, if it's going into production, like obviously Bret Easton Ellis as the author has the ability to know what is going on should he wanted to. So So I thought that was interesting, but it kind of reminded me of this because when we get to the end and he talks about the Matrix, he says, he's like, yeah, it's just like this is what he says. Next up, Goddard is writing, directing, and producing the next edition of The Matrix for Warner Brothers. Goddard and Esberg will produce along with the original franchise co-writer and co-director Lana Wachowski as executive producer. I'm writing, that's all I can tell you. There is not a lot to report, and I've learned not to say too much because I might change my mind about anything small or large with regard to it. So it sounds like it's just really early in the whole process. Let's see. Mirror says, wasn't Goddard supposed to be working on a Cloverfield movie with a big monster? I don't know if Drew Goddard had gotten back into the Cloverfield world for a while. And yeah, that I skipped past it real fast, but we can go back. But the Lost reboot thing is just like again, another one of those hypotheticals like, oh, would there ever be a Lost reboot? And so Variety says, there's nothing in the works right now, but he says, quote, never say never. I loved working on that show so much, and I loved what we did. For those of you all who watched Fear HQ, producer Brandon, aka Brandon Winfrey, when he would pull stories for the Fear cast, we would always talk about, he would always say, and he's so right. It was so funny. He'd always be like, yeah, just a lot of stories about somebody saying to an actor, hey, would you like to be in this really cool, crazy movie if you had the opportunity? And the actor saying, absolutely, I'd love to. And then that's a whole news cycle. And I just was like, yeah, that's kind of what half of these stories are right now. So again, Lost revival. He says, never say never. I liked working on it. Sure, that'd be interesting. Same with one of my other stories here. Taylor Kitsch, they're rebooting Friday Night Lights. He's been asked, but basically he's just like, yeah, I told him I'd do an episode, but of course, sometimes these actors are being coy, but it just really it always makes me laugh. It always makes me laugh. Let's see. Nick says, I think the business side of Netflix is volume driven. Some hit, some don't. For every carry on, there will be several similar movies that sunk without a trace. Yes, and mid-budget to Netflix's peanuts, they don't need everything to hit. Yes, this is true. However, I do think that the strategy of just not promoting your movies and then being like, well, what can we do? Nobody watched it, so no, or your TV shows, whole new season of, of course they go all in on Squid Game, but then, you have 3 series that come to Netflix over here and they're like, oh, well, we didn't promote it, but also nobody watched it. So what are you going to do? And it's like, well, maybe if you told people that the show existed, or maybe if you told people that the movie existed, people would watch it. Like, I don't know. It's kind of this like weird snake eating its tail kind of thing. ZSH says Jason Bateman's and Michael J. Fox's Teen Wolf movies were huge in my family growing up. We watched them many times, even while visiting family on the other side of the planet. Totally true. I was a big Teen Wolf fan when I was a kid as well. I was also just a big Michael J. Fox fan, so I watched a lot of his stuff. Gishgali says, Netflix cares about impressions. As long as people are talking about it, they are happy. I would love to see a case study on Carry On versus Red One. Yeah, samesies. Samesies. Was Brandon that? Yeah. You know Brandon. And he also, crushed at mini golf, among other things. The good old days of Hollywood and filmmaking. Yeah. And as far as Taylor Kitsch goes, he sounds like he's pretty busy. Like, as in, I will say, here, share this tab. I will say the crux of this article is I have been asked to be involved in the new Friday Night Lights show. And he says, I have been asked, and I'll leave it at that. Okay, great. And then he went on to say, so I do like that the article says, but he didn't leave it at that. And he said, I was asked to be a part of some kind of reboot. He claimed that he wouldn't want to lead the reboot, but I would come in and do something that maybe for an episode or something. So it's like kind of interesting. So to your point, like he seems to be turning stuff down, much like Armie Hammer, except actually. And Mirror Domain says he was really good in Lone Survivor. Yep. So I think Taylor Kitsch is doing all right. Okay, y'all. Speaking of all right, I think that's going to do it for us today. This was fun. Thank you all so much for indulging me and for tuning in. You know, as we said, no hair, no makeup, no microphone, no light. No, actually, I'm by a very nice window, though, and this light is kind of perfect. No camera, just the laptop and the news. But I really, really appreciate you all being, so understanding, not only today, but also with the postponement of this past Monday's stream because of the move. And we're all just going to take it like one day at a time and do our best to stay safe and stay vigilant and stay nimble. Because as you know, this whole thing in Southern California, it's not over. So, but thank you again for all of your support. And this, I'm really glad that we had an opportunity to do the news show, which we haven't quite done yet. It's very reminiscent of some of the other shows, but I think it's fun. I hope it's fun. And we'll find a rhythm and all of that. Thank you, Nick. I will stay safe. And thank you so much for tuning in. I have not read Mo Ryan's book, Burn It Down. Might be an episode in that. Maybe get her on the show. Oh, I love that. Okay, that's a great idea. I'll look it up for sure. But not a room tidy. Yeah, exactly. That's right. Another Mr. Lizard. Well, it was really more that I didn't have internet, no internet set up in my new place yet, but yes. Thank you, Yogurt Garrel. This was so great. Thank you for joining us today, by the way. That was wonderful. I'm so happy to see you, Yogurt Garrel. That was really fun. All right, y'all. Thanks again. If you haven't already, hit subscribe on YouTube. If you're interested, patreon.com/ClarkeWolfe. There are free subscription or memberships and so on and so on. There are different tiers, but we'll have some more community-based activities coming soon. And as a reminder, if you want to support your favorite creators, especially during this really scary time, obviously there are ways to do that monetarily, whether they have a Patreon or American Red Cross or wonderful organizations who really need money. As Gishgali said, there was a shelter in Pasadena that was like turning things like food and blankets away, and they basically are just saying we need money. So yes, you have those opportunities, but also if you can, rent someone's movie, buy someone's movie, engage with them on social media, that stuff really stream someone's movie if it's on streaming, or TV show, that stuff makes a difference. It really helps. All right, y'all take care. Thanks again. And I'll see you on Monday. Bye, everyone.